I spent a lot of time in a kitchen just about like this one when I was a boy. That was quite a few years ago. In Saluda, North Carolina, where I grew up. Now, this thing used to make a terrible racket. But it kept the ice cream cold. That's all I cared about. My, how things have changed. Recognize this? This is Henry Ford's first car. He called it a quadricycle. That's a bicycle with two more wheels. And this is a family fearless. Fearless. Might have been easier to do it by hand. This is an amazing place. The Henry Ford Museum. About 200 yards that way is Greenfield Village. Together they're called the Edison Institute. Edison, as in Thomas Alva Edison. He was both a hero and a friend to Henry Ford. I know a lot of people may be tempted to say, oh, this is just a lot of old American stuff. Henry Ford founded this place, and he didn't see this as just a collection of old American stuff. He said something like this about it. When we're through, we'll be able to see a part of American life as people lived it. If we can look at those things and put them into some kind of perspective, we can get a better idea than if we read about it for a month. Ford's internal combustion engine, made of assorted machine parts, boiler parts, and even a very large bicycle chain. Yep, more than I could read about in a month. No, this isn't just stuff, not just things. Everything here is part of American life as people lived it. Little nuggets along the way that are part of our ever-changing world. Around the time of the American Revolution, most Americans lived in houses not too different from this one. That was the late 1700s. But during the early 1800s, there began a most amazing technological and industrial evolution. Their world revolved around their family. They were religious, sometimes superstitious, and they had to work awfully hard just to survive. Their roots came from another continent. For the vast majority of Americans, their neighbors were way over the hill on the next farm. Not much change for them from day to day, except the weather. There wasn't much variation from year to year, generation to generation. It's probably safe to say that the family who lived here wasn't living a whole lot differently than their ancestors did on another continent 1,000 years before. But things were about to change. Providing the push for that change more than anything else was the dawning of the era of steam. The steam-powered lumber mill provided uniform building timber for people to use by the millions of carloads. The steam-powered grist mill turned out millions of tons of additional flour for people. Take that power from a single engine and use it to power any number of different machines. The machine could produce the same part a man could fashion by hand, but more precisely and quicker. bring together a number of different parts, assemble them, and turn out a whole product for people. Entrepreneurs built shops and brought craftsmen together and divided up the work. Individual craftsmen joined other craftsmen. Two could form a beautiful picture as well as one, and more quickly. Teams of workers and new manufacturing techniques meant that 10 or hundreds or thousands of objects could be produced for thousands of people at a price they could afford. And the word of the changing America began to spread westward, slowly at first, person to person. The Lewis and Clark Overland Expedition to the Pacific began in 1804. It took 2 years to complete. 55 years later, about one person's lifetime, a telegraph cable was stretched coast to coast. And the two coasts were joined by rail 8 years after that. And the cities began to grow. By 1850, Chicago's population was 30,000. By 1860, 100,000. America was on the move, and hundreds of thousands of new immigrants headed west with them. By the mid-1800s, the prevailing mood of America was that technology could and would solve just about all our problems. This farmhouse here in Greenfield Village was built in 1861, not very far from here. That was the year the Civil War began. The same year that first telegraph line went coast to coast. You and I could live in a house like this one without a lot of strain. Indoor plumbing of sorts. A portable bathtub. Heat up the water for it on the cook stove. Their light was kerosene lamps. They were a home improvement made after oil was discovered in America and lighting by oil became practical. A growing mountain of affordable merchandise was becoming more and more available. And, as you might expect, there was a certain amount of change for change's sake. That led to the marketing of some highly unusual, well, I call them contraptions. Yes, indeed. There were some contraptions, some frills, a whole lot of necessity and mass-produced elegance. This was the choice available to America. Out on the farm, new inventions and mechanizations made bigger and better farming possible for a growing population. But the lure of the city was taking its toll. All the technology and mechanization in the world couldn't keep the farm kids down on the farm, not after they'd seen the city. Industry was slowly but surely replacing agriculture as our economic cornerstone. And the pendulum was swinging toward a nation of city dwellers. We were a country of astounding growth and of soot and cinders. Tools, rooftops, hands, and lungs were black. Sweatshops were real. 84 hours a week, 5 cents an hour. Children of 8 and 10 were put to work $1.50 for a 7-day week. Safe working conditions were an afterthought. In 1892, President Harrison declared, American workmen are subject to peril of life and limb as great as a soldier in time of war. I'm right here. You know, we can't excuse or ignore what went before. America was kind of coming in out of the dark, growing up. There was some bad, to be sure. But Much more good had happened for a lot of people. Behind that good were some curious men. Men with business sense and people sense. This is Thomas Edison's electric light. He sensed both the need for it and the potential profit from it. But Edison didn't hide in a cellar and invent this electric light. He worked here in his Menlo Park laboratory. Edison and his employees. This place was an invention factory, the world's first commercial research center. And it was moved lock, stock, bottles, even New Jersey dirt, right here to Greenfield Village. He made the light work. But even more important, Edison built an electrical distribution system that took electricity to all the people everywhere to use for whatever their purpose. When Edison turned on this light to stay in 1879, and the world lit up, middle-class America was living pretty well. As we edged into this 20th century of ours, 150,000 phonographs had been sold, and over 3 million records. People could make phone conversations just about anywhere. Trains crisscrossed America over 200,000 miles of railroad track. Chicago had grown up all the way to 1,700,000 people, and we were just about through flapping our wings and getting down to some serious flying. A few thousand people had already seen something called a motion picture. Automobiles had raced coast to coast, and we weren't far from mass producing them on an assembly line. Farmers, city folks, families, going for a ride on Sunday afternoon. Going places they couldn't go before. Seeing things they couldn't see before. The American home was beginning to look a lot like home as we know it. Yes, there has been a lot of change. Back in medieval times, anything that was new was considered either a mystery or a miracle. Well, our world isn't much of a mystery to us anymore. Yet we are surrounded by miracles. Surrounded by miracles of function and design and convenience. We accept them. They're commonplace, and that's okay. But they are miraculous. Nobody dreamed up our homes, our conveniences, the world around us 150, 200 years ago. Nobody scheduled it, built it all, then held it in escrow just for us until we were ready to go pick it up. No, our miracles happen slowly. People back then had a lot to do with what surrounds us today. Here, right now, we have a chance to experience the amazing and unexpected twists and turns of change. And as Henry Ford said, put it in some kind of perspective. It's more than you could read about in a month. Maybe even in a lifetime. and it is certainly worth a nice leisurely look. Enjoy it.